Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jagristabha, Paramahamsa, Parvakacharya, Astasasha, Shishivati, Samankre, Sesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki. Jagristabha, Paramahamsa, Parvakacharya, Astasasha, Shishivati, Samankre, Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki. Anantakoti Vaishnava Ki. Namacharya Shahardas Ko Ki. Namaste Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Dvaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath, Shyamakund Radhakund Puri Govardhan Ki Jai. Gangamaya Vrindavan Ki, Navdik Maya Bodhan Ki, Nilachal Jagannath Puri Dham Ki, Gangamaya Jamunamaya Ki, Tulsi Bhaktivedanta Ki. Shri Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution Ki. Shri Prasad Distribution Ki. Vaishnav Seva Vaishnav Sangh Ki. Iskon Guru Vrinda Ki. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Nitai Gaur Premanand. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. The speech of our very philosophy, which you can take the devotional service, and my doubt is lotus feet is great in all heavens. My inspiration from across the ocean of material suffering, and I take the mercy of Krishna. When I wishes to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth, attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth, permanent, static, preeminence, and flying influences is shown. The greatest riches and sinless character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us a share of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout the world. We take shelter at your lotus feet. Is the right grace, Sesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shri His name is worthy of your mercy, so that souls action and flourish in others of happy devotees, and blessings to Srimad today, and especially love for you and your devotees. Shri Gauranga Krishna Ki Jai.
Jai Radha Jai Hari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kanya Bihari Govijana Vallabha Jaya Govijana Vallabha Yashodanandana Braja Jananandana Yashodanandana Braja Jananandana Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kanya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kanya Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Shishimanitai Maya Shishipita. Reading from Lila Gita. This is chapter 7. The land was very dry. Prabhupada said that Vrindavan was becoming like a desert and would become so in the future. He said this was because of impiety. In the West, he said, I see in America, Germany, there is so much green, but not here. The devotees then questioned Prabhupada, wasn't the West more impious than Vrindavan? Yes, Prabhupada said, I came to you in the West and you did not know anything about Krishna. You did not even know that these things were bad, meat eating, illicit sex. When I told you to stop, you did it. And this is Krishna's land, Vrindavan, and they're doing these things here. Therefore, it is even worse, and they are being punished directly by Krishna. Prabhupada's morning walks in Vrindavan were as exciting and enlightening as his formal lectures. On 2 consecutive morning walks, he outlined a comprehensive plan for starting an ISKCON or National College. Bhagavad Gita explains how society should be divided into 4 orders according to a person's nature and occupation. Prabhupada said that although the members of the Krishna consciousness movement were above the social divisions, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, they should teach others by acting perfectly within these divisions. Not everyone would become a Brahmin, but everyone could attain the same perfection by doing this particular duty for the pleasure of Krishna. We will teach military art, said Prabhupada to the amazement of his disciples. Soldiers will wear tilak and march, saying, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And they can march with military valor and fight. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Krishna needs you. They don't make a poster, right? Krishna needs you. Camel sign this one. America needs you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 5, Chapter 1, the activities of Maharaj Priyavrata, text 18. Ya Sapatnan Vijigishamano Yashat Sapatnan Vijigishamano Griheshu Nevisha Yateta Pavan Griheshu Nevishesha Yateta Pavan Atyati Degashita Ejitaran Atyeta Degashita Ujitarin Shineshu Kamam Vicharan Vipaschit Shineshu Kaman Vicharan Vipaschit Yashat Sapatnan Vijikin Shamano Griheshu Nevisha Yateta Pavan Adyati Dagashrita Ujitarin Shineshu Kaman Vicharet Vipaschit Yashat Satanan Vijigishamano Griheshu Nevisha Yateta Pavan Adyati Durgashita Ujitarin Shineshu Kaman Vicharat Vipaschit Yashat Saptanan Vichigishamano Griheshu Nivishayate Tapavam Adyati Durgashita Ujitarin Shineshu Kaman Vicharat Vipaschit Bolo
Sapatnam Vichikishano
Yashat Shapatnan Vijigishamano Griheshu Nivishyayate Tapavam Adyeti Durgashvita Ujitarin Shineshu Kam Vicharet Vipaschit
Ladies.
Yasat Sapatnam Vichikishamano
Creation Nivishayate Tapavam
Adyeti Durgashita Ujitarin
Adyati Durgashvita Ujitarin
Shineshu Kaman Vicharet Vipaschit
Shineshu Kaman Vicharat Vipaschit
Yasat Sapatnam Vichikishamano
Yasat Sapatnam Vijigishamano Creation Nivishayate Tapavam Adyati Durgashvita Ujitarin Shineshu Kaman Vicharat Vipaschit Yaha. Anyone who Shat 6 Saptanan adversaries Vijigishamana desiring to conquer Griheshu in household life Nirvisha having entered Niteta must try Purvam first Adyati conquers Durga Ashrita being in a fortified place Ojita Arin very strong enemies Shineshu decreased Kamam lusty desires Vicharat can go Vipaschit the most experienced learned. Translation. One who is situated in household life and who systematically conquers his mind and 5 sense organs is like a king in his fortress who conquers his powerful enemies. After one has been trained in household life and his lusty desires have decreased, he can move anywhere without danger. Responsibility, please. One who is situated in household life and who systematically conquers His mind and 5 sense organs is like a king in his fortress who conquers his powerful enemies. After one has been trained in household life and his lusty desires have decreased, he can move anywhere without danger. The Vedic system of 4 varnas and 4 ashrams is very significant, and its entire purpose is to enable one to control the senses. Before entering household life, Grihastha ashram, a student is fully trained to become Jitendriya, a conqueror of the senses. Such a mature student is allowed to become a householder, and because he was first trained in conquering his senses, he retires from household life and becomes Vanaprastha as soon as the strong waves of youthful life are past, and he reaches the verge of old age at 50 years or slightly more. Then after being further trained, he accepts sannyas. He is then a fully learned and renounced person who can move anywhere and everywhere without fear of being captivated by material desires. The senses are considered very powerful enemies. As a king in a strong fortress can conquer powerful enemies, so a householder in Grihastha ashram, household life, can conquer the lusty desires of youth and be very secure when he takes Vanaprastha and sannyas. Om Ganatamadanda Shagalandina Shalakaya Chakshurunvaribandina Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gauramattavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Vanchikalpatrubhishya Kripasindhya, Ridanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. One who is situated in household life and who systematically conquers his mind and 5 sense organs is like a king in his fortress who conquers his powerful enemies. After one has been trained in household life and his lusty desires have decreased, he can move anywhere without danger. So, interesting, Prabhupada uses the word systematically. So, systematic. When something is, if someone's very systematic, it means that it's like they're executing a very accurate operation. And it was interesting, I just listened the other day, Mahatma Guru was saying, he was talking about japa, and he was saying that when you chant your japa, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that you shouldn't have a conversation with somebody while you're touching your beads. So if you're chanting and you realize you have to say something very important, then Bhaktivinoda Thakur recommends taking your hand out of the bead bag, making the announcement, and then putting your hand back into the bead bag. And Mahatma Prabhu was giving an example that if you're in an operating theatre, just before you go into the operating theatre, you may have discovered you have a hole in your shoe or your tires going down on the car. But as soon as the scalpel goes into your hand and you start slicing into the flesh of the anaesthetized person, everything becomes focused on that operation. And the tire's forgotten, the hole in your shoe is forgotten, everything else is forgotten. Now you're going to systematically perform an operation. And that's what japa is like. When you put your hand inside the bead bag, there's no chatting, there's nothing else, there's no holding your shoe, there's no, what that devotee said to me yesterday was outrageous, everything's switched off, it's just you, the mind, and the holy name. They're the only 3 things going on in the only active elements in the arena. It's a very simple arena japa. You, the mind, and the holy name. That's all there is, nothing else. And you're trying to get from where you are to the holy name without being intercepted by the mind. And to do that properly, you have to be very systematic. So Prabhupada doesn't use the words lightly, especially in the translation, systematically. And so everything is there, all the instruments and paraphernalia have been given. And all that's necessary now is abhideya, is to put into practice the sambandha. So the sambandha is you're collecting all the information, the sound of the mantra, the way to sit, how to eat, how to sleep, how to perform your devotional activities, how to associate with the devotees. This is all the sambandha. Then when they're all in place, then abhideya, then we put it into practice. And then we have to be patient, and eventually prayojana. And prayojana is also similar to prayojayat, and we have the Gayatri mantra. And toward the end of a lot of the lines is prayojayat, and prayojayat means to be enthused. So this enthusiasm is really the effect of experiencing love for God. When we're experiencing affection for Krishna, then we become enthused. So that is the prayojana, to experience this to become enthused by wanting to do things in a loving way, to lovingly want to engage in devotional service. That's the goal. I'm trying to achieve that as quickly as we can. So systematic. So if it's done systematically, then we conquer the mind and the 5 sense organs, like a king in his fortress who conquers his powerful enemies. And that's interesting as well, isn't it? Because unless you have sambandha, then you won't realize that they are your powerful enemies. Unless you have the original knowledge, identifying what the enemies are, then you could think that these are actually your friends. So you haven't got much chance of conquering an enemy if you don't realize he's your enemy. If you think he's your friend, then there's not much chance of conquering him. So we have to identify who is the enemy and who is the friend. After one has been trained in household life and his lusty desires have decreased, he can move anywhere without danger. So that's grihastha. There's griha medi and there's grihastha. So I was just reading the other day actually, by Govinda Maharaj. I don't know if I can find it now. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, medi means, does anyone know what medi means? Medi means jealousy. Jealousy of others. Therefore, one griha medi is not on good terms with another griha medi. Because they're all jealous of each other. They're all okay. Well, look at his car. Well, look at him. He's got this. He's got the next thing. So that's griha medi. And then there's grihastha. Grihastha is an ashram, which means a status where you're making spiritual advancement. So it should be that grihastha ashram decreases lusty desires. It shouldn't be the grihastha ashram. But it won't be the grihastha ashram if it's increasing lusty desires. It'll be the griha medi. I don't think you can call it the griha medi ashram, just the griha medi house. Such a mature student is allowed to become a householder. So it's interesting that it's a mature student who's Jitendriya, who's conquered his senses, who's eligible for becoming a householder. So Prabhupada once said, all my female disciples should get married, and all my male disciples should remain brahmachari. And what that meant was that when the male disciple marries the female disciple, he remains brahmachari. It's called Brahma. There's another name also for it, but it basically means upakavana. It basically means that there's no other sex, it's only for conception. And so therefore he's the same as brahmachari. So to be a brahmachari in household life, you have to first of all be trained, be eligible. If you're finding it very difficult to be a brahmachari, then you're going to find it even more difficult to be a grihastha. They say it's difficult to fast in front of, just fasting is difficult. If you're having a problem fasting, then don't sit in front of a feast. So if you're having difficulty being brahmachari, then don't get married. Your eligibility for married life is that you are a good brahmachari and you learn Jitendriya, you learn to conquer your senses. And then the relationship can be very nice because it's based upon mutual respect. That's why it's becoming very undignified. There's no training for male and female how to relate to each other in relationships. And so everything is becoming very undignified. There's not this control there. So then how can there be respect if there's no control? If the male behaves like an animal, then how can the female feel protected and secure in that type of relationship? So as you tend there is the qualification. If senses are conquered, then you can become a really good householder. And then in the householder life, I just read something very interesting. The devotees derive more transcendental pleasure while engaged continuously in the service of the Lord than when they have no such engagement. This is from the Bhagavatam. I think it's third canto. In the family combination of a man and a woman, there is much labor and responsibility for both of them. Yet when they are single, they feel more trouble for want of their united activities. Interesting, yeah? Devotees derive more transcendental pleasure while engaged continuously in the service of the Lord than when they have no such engagement. So sometimes the devotee may be thinking, oh, this is getting too much. There's so many things I have to do, so much responsibility. I'm being held accountable for this. I have to do that. There's no time. I'm tired. Or, I think I'm just going to leave and live in a tree house, live a peaceful life, and I'll just chant Hare Krishna. Maybe go on Facebook if we can get internet connection. Maybe have to get more mobile data. But like the man and the woman, so there's so much labor and responsibility, looking after the kids, if they've got kids, looking after each other. But when they are single, they feel more trouble for want of their united activities. So you go away in the hope of getting free of trouble, and you get more trouble, more disturbance. So eventually sannyas, there was a devotee that came, Yadananda Maharaj, where we had our European farm meeting, and he was telling us in the car, he's compiling a book, and it's about the reasons why, how best not to fall down from the sannyas ashram. He was interviewing some sannyasis that had left the ashram and fallen down and asking them. And the general opinion was that they entered the sannyas ashram too early. If they'd have waited till they were a bit older. So that's being explained here as well. The general system, the systematic and scientific system, is that when a person's approaching old age, 50, I can definitely testify to that. Old age comes in when you're 50. The spring goes out your leg. Apart from Raj. So then, so the good thing is that as your body starts to wear down, the senses become less strong. You haven't got as much, there's not that much drive anymore to try and enjoy the senses. So that's good. And the price you pay for that is your legs and your knees go, and generally your body becomes more worn out. So that's the benefit anyway. And then, so then entering into Vanaprastha and eventually sannyas becomes easier. So unfortunately people don't know this, so therefore they get transplants off monkeys, and they do all kinds of artificial arrangements to try and mitigate the wearing down of the body. Oh, I can't enjoy my senses anymore. Maybe if I replace this gland with this, or I get this serum, or I take this aphrodisiac, and I can reverse the aging process. But the aging process is there, it's built in, it's part of the system, the systematic system is to grow old and eventually embrace death. So rather than fighting against that, we should accept the natural course of life and understand what it is we need to learn. And I read something really nice about that this morning. Be sincere in purpose, and then the Lord is there to help in every way. Don't get caught up in the conflicts. Sorry, I should be saying where this is from. This is from Dhanavir Maharaj when he came in 2013. He said, don't get caught up in conflicts. Then we can let Krishna do his magic. And this one is from the Bhagavatam. The real solution to all our problems is seeing Krishna behind everything going on in our lives and understanding what Krishna wants from us. What does Krishna want from us? That's the solution, the real solution. We're looking for solutions. Sometimes we're thinking, well, maybe if this building was this shape instead, and maybe if I was with this group of devotees instead, and maybe if I was over here doing this type of service instead, then things would be okay. So we only know, according to what our mind is speculating, that that's the solution. And we know that the mind quite often gets it wrong. So the best solution is to see Krishna behind everything and understand what Krishna wants from us. So Krishna does say this in the Gita. He says, Machita Sarvadergani, all problems. Machita, mat me, chitta, become conscious. If you become conscious, Sarvadergani, you'll pass over all the problems. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the different problems of conditional life by my grace. If, however, you do not act in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, then you will be lost. Nasroshasi, vinashasi. Nasroshasi. If you don't hear, then vinashasi, then you'll be lost. So then your ability to be conscious of Krishna, of seeing Krishna behind everything, and understanding what Krishna wants us to do, that'll be lost. You won't know why it's happening the way it is and what it is you're supposed to be doing. What's the next step forward? Krishna's always trying to take us a step forward. In our march, Srila Prabhupada called it our march back to Godhead. We're marching back to Godhead. If you're in war, I think everyone marches to war. Left, right, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Like a march towards Krishna. And the mind is saying, oh no, it doesn't look good, this looks dangerous, I don't think I want to go this way. But if the whole army is marching, then we just have to keep in step. Any questions? Any questions or comments? Yes.
Yeah, I was considering about, Prabhupada mentions 50 years, and the devotees or highest people can join into Vanaprastha ashram or sannyasi, kind of sannyasi. And I remember from my school time when I was learning English, the people who were 50 years old, they were supposed to be middle-aged. So why even people consider 50 people to be old age, and European people consider 50 years old people to be middle-aged?
So Peter's question, for those who didn't catch it, is that in India, a 50-year-old person is considered old, but in Europe, or in the West in general, a 50-year-old person is considered to be middle-aged. So in the West, the general drift of the consciousness of the culture is trying to avoid old age and to try and forget that there is death. Because these are disturbing factors in the arena of sense gratification. So whereas in the East they embrace, they don't try to hide death. Dead people are buried at the bathing, everyone watches the body being consumed by the flames. Nothing's hidden, it's all very raw and open. And we learn the lesson, we see the body being consumed by the flames, and we see that that's not the person that we loved. It helps us to see that, it helps us to learn. And we don't fight the fact that we're growing old. We don't keep getting our skin and clipping it up, and tightening it, and putting skin inside the skin to make it bloat out, to try and deny the fact that we are growing old. We're okay about it. We don't mind, okay, middle age is here. Old age is starting to come. Death will be here soon. Okay. And people get embarrassed about their age, as if it's their fault that they're old. So, due to identification with the body, and there's all these artificial means of trying to avoid. So why avoid? Why not just accept? Why not accept? Okay, we're all going to grow old. Everything's going to sag. Everything's going to go south eventually. Yeah, there was an advertisement, and there was this man, and he was encouraging us to do this course. It was like a weightlifting course, and he had all these pretty ladies around him, and he was flexing his muscles. And the only thing that looked really weird was he had this really old face. It looked like it had been photoshopped into the body of Superman. It looked really weird, you know. Just didn't go with the body at all. So he'd made his body that like muscular, and there was no room for any wrinkles. His muscles were that flexed, and it looked like the body of a 30-year-old man with this face on it, which looked like a face of a monkey, like a wrinkled old monkey face. And it just made him look more ridiculous, actually. So you're fighting a losing battle, and it's very kind of, what's the opposite of elegant? It's very distasteful that they're trying so hard to try to cover up the fact, you know, that they put all this makeup on, and they stretch their skin and bloat their skin. So better to just age gracefully and accept. I mean, Srila Prabhupada, he didn't put cream on his face to make the wrinkles go away. But Srila Prabhupada was very beautiful and very, very attractive because of his purity. So if we can focus on becoming spiritually advanced, and why are people doing all this to their bodies? Because they want to be attracted. They want people to be attracted to them. So if you want people to be attracted, then become Krishna conscious, because that's what people are really looking for. They're looking for people who are spiritually aware, people who are unafraid of death. People find that very attractive, actually. If you meet somebody that's not afraid of dying, it's very attractive. You know, if they really are not afraid of dying because they know where they're going, not just because they're intoxicated or they're pretending. They actually know. And there's no fear in them. They're just, they can accept everything in life, all the difficulties and hardships. Equanimity is one of the qualities, isn't it? In the Bhagavad Gita, equipoised, not disturbed. Any other questions or comments? Raj,
it says in the translation, systematically encompasses mind and five senses. If you've conquered your mind, have you not conquered your five senses?
If you conquered your mind, you've automatically conquered your five senses.
Right.
Yeah, it says systematically. So systematically would mean you would start with the grossest and then work up to the subtlest. So for someone to achieve the stage of steadiness this year, the first thing is that they become bodily steadily. So they're in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing, and then they become vocally steady. They're in the right place, doing the right thing, and saying the right things. And eventually, they become mentally fixed if they're thinking the right things. So thinking the right thing isn't always the easiest of things to do. You can do the right thing. That's why we're chanting. The easiest and best thing, first of all, is concentrate on Kirtana, because everybody can say Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Everyone can say Hare Krishna. We can all say. That's the grossest thing. We just say it, just get the mantra out. Now, whether you can hear it is a more subtle thing. Shraddha. Will you be able to hear? Well, maybe you will hear, maybe you won't hear. You hope you can hear. We try every day, don't we? But we can become distracted. And then eventually, at the very highest stage, Smarana. Smarana is that there's an impression now on the mind, so you can't forget Krishna. whatever happens, you don't forget Krishna. Like the Bhaktas in the van that I was in 82 in Chaitanya College, and the van, everyone was talking about this, which is Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. And then the van, the little minibus, hit an ice patch and began to spin round, and all the Bhaktas were like, and was going, and then suddenly he got back onto dry ground, and the wheels caught grip again, and everything started to go okay, and everybody went, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. So that means just the very gross, we've got the kind of gross idea of it down to just what you should chant, but the idea of remembering Krishna, that should have been the first thing. It should have been that they were all sitting like that when they hit the ice patch. That's when they went, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. That's when they remembered Krishna. So first of all, we conquer the working senses. We do things with our hands and with our feet and with our body. We engage the body in service. And then what's nice about doing puja, you're offering articles to Krishna. And as you're offering the articles, you're meditating on doing a certain amount of circles to the feet and then to the waist and then to the face and then all around the body. So it engages you so that you can then meditate on the forms of the deities. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he encourages meditating on the deities, looking at the deities, so that they form a samskara, an impression on the mind, so that it's like if you've been photographing the deities for a long time. You go away, when you close your eyes, you can see the deities' faces very clearly. So that's the final thing. Finally, the mind becomes absorbed. We do all the gross things and the more subtle things, and then eventually the consciousness becomes absorbed in Krishna. So that throughout the day, that form of Krishna is there in the mind. So systematically. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah,
Peter?
Yeah, I was just considering about, you spoke about how to remember Krishna, what is the best way
To remember Krishna. The best way.
Yes, and I many times have this experience, I just feel inside, and then I remember Krishna, but then I utter the mantra, for example, loudly. It's more for me like I address to Lord Krishna. I address to Lord Krishna.
Yeah.
But when I feel inside, and more it's a silent practice, I remember Krishna. So to address Krishna and to remember Krishna, I feel still there's a difference in remembering Krishna. And for me, this feeling inside is much more deeper to remember Krishna than I speak loudly.
Yeah.
Maybe this is individually, or I don't know why.
Well, some devotees, when they're chanting, they feel Krishna in the sound vibration. Some feel Krishna in their bodies. Some feel Krishna on their tongue. I remember one devotee was telling me he was chanting, and he could feel Krishna dancing on his tongue. It didn't happen very often, but when it did, it was very nice. Yeah, there's a fine line between us and our techniques and Krishna and his mercy. So ultimately we're dependent upon Krishna's mercy. And we're hoping to invoke Krishna's mercy by chanting in this way, by doing things in that way, and avoiding doing these things, and trying to do these other things. And we're hoping that Krishna will become pleased. If Krishna becomes pleased, then we become conscious of him. So that's interesting because it means Krishna is always conscious of us, but he's not allowing us to become conscious of him until he decides it's appropriate, it's the right time. He's the expert judge of time and circumstance as well. Maybe we think we want to be conscious of Krishna, but Krishna can see deeper, and he sees, well, you have so many plans to enjoy yourself. If I make you conscious of me now, maybe that will upset everything. So I'm just going to stay out of the picture until you really do. And that's like JC chanting and AC chanting. So JC chanting is just chanting. And AC chanting is actually chanting. Actually chanting. Actually, when you're actually chanting. When you're actually serving. Are you just serving? Or are you actually serving? Are you just chanting? Or are you actually chanting? So when you are actually doing everything for Krishna, then that's when Krishna. It's like they say, if you don't really want Krishna, then you won't really get him. You have to really want Krishna to really get him. So if you really want Krishna, then he'll do himself. But if you don't really want him, but you just want to pretend that you want him, so the people will think you're pious and think you're a great devotee, then you can maybe fool people for a little period of time, but you won't fool Krishna. So if you really want Krishna, then you really get him. There's one devotee right now, she's going through a lot of Hare Krishna, she's going through a lot of physical difficulty, and she was just relating some of the realizations and experiences she's been getting. So you can see she's really taking shelter. So Krishna doesn't come cheap. You have to really want him. You have to want him so badly, and then Krishna will come. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Raj.
You were saying about Maharaj that he's writing a book about some of the devotees go down.
Sannyasis.
Sannyasis go down. Was it actually too early? They joined too early.
Most of it was because it was too early. Yeah.
Should there be an age limit?
Well, they say, the Varnashram system is 75, and Srila Prabhupada had to, it was an emergency situation, so he had to make best use of what he had. But now that as a society we're maturing, we have a lot more resource than we did have in the early days. And there's a lot more knowledge now, a lot more books that we can access. Just generally, devotees know a lot more stuff than they used to know. And because of that, we're having less problems with the different ashrams. Devotees are able to maintain their vows and their ashrams. So the more knowledge we have, the more our devotional activities are over-coated with this knowledge, then the safer and the deeper the devotion can go as well. We have real knowledge why we're doing things. We really understand that everything we do, there's a meaning to it. Everything. So the more we're aware of that, the deeper we're able to practice it. To really be able to understand why we're doing this and why we're not doing that. Become aware of what is unwanted and what is wanted. Clarifying everything. So, generally 50 to 75 vanaprastha and then 75 to. As we mature as a society, then there will be more sannyasis, older sannyasis, and they'll be fixed in their renunciation, and they'll make the society in general much stronger also by their association. The sannyasis encouraging the devotees that are coming up to become more and more renounced and to become more and more free of the fear of death. As you become more detached, what follows knowledge is detachment. It says here, one who is attached to sex life is to be understood as devoid of knowledge. That's from Bhagavatam, I think. I can find out the exact reference. One who is attached to sex life is to be understood as devoid of knowledge. Knowledge must be followed by detachment. So you may know a lot of slokas, and you may have read 5,000 books, but are you attached? If you're attached to things, then you don't have real knowledge. And the person who's detached, one of the things we get most attached to is making plans. We're very attached to our plans. We have certain things that we want to have happen, This is going to happen on this day, then we're going to do this. Tomorrow I'm going to go and do my laundry, and then tomorrow the washing machine's exploded. So then see how undisturbed the devotee is. Oh well, I have to do it by hand. Or, oh my goodness me. If you get very upset very easily, then it means you're very attached. You're attached to the way you want things. You have your preconceived idea of how things should happen, and when they don't, you get upset. All the toys come out the pram. I don't want to play anymore. So that means attached. A person with knowledge who's detached, then whatever happens, whichever way it goes, he just accepts. Okay. So let me just still be Krishna's servant in this situation. I still have to serve and think of Krishna wherever the situation is. And therefore, the most disturbing thing will be death, because nobody plans to die, right? 5:30 this evening, I'm going to be having a heart attack, and I'll be dropping dead. So just so everybody knows, nobody makes a plan, right? When you drop dead, it's the last thing on your plan. What's happening? It's usually, I didn't plan this. What's going on? It's going to be, it should be at least in the 5-10 years. I've got so many plans, you know. So if you're very attached, death is going to be a big disturbance. Because it's the biggest thing that can go wrong, you know, it's worse than that. It's like having 100 washing machines explode all at the same time when you die. Everything goes, the whole thing. You don't know where you're going, nothing's planned, you haven't washed your socks. Onto the down, at least a pair of clean socks on. No, sorry, you're getting kicked out right now. Boom, that's it. Game over. So while we've got a chance, it's like a little, you know, if you ever get into gardening, if you pull something out and it comes out really easily, you usually know it's not a weed. That's how you know. And if it takes ages and it snaps and the roots, so then you know you're onto a weed usually. They're usually really difficult to get out weeds. So the bigger the root, the more of a wrench. So the more attached you are to everything, all the stuff that's going on, all the different subtle and gross attachments that are there. And you've embedded yourself in the material world, you've got all these different things, and then suddenly you're getting tugged, or you're not going to come very easy. It's going to be quite a wrenching experience. And somebody else, like aloe vera hasn't even got any roots, and if you want to transplant an aloe vera, if you take it out, it's just a very smooth shoot that just comes down. You can just take the whole plant out and pop it into something else. So we want to be like aloe vera. So that when that tug comes, oh, okay, here we go. Hare Krishna. And that's it.
It's the advantage of communal life to the opportunity to give up, to see how attached one is, and the opportunity to give them up and just go with how everybody agreed to do things, for everybody's benefit rather than centering around ourselves.
And that's why if you want to develop the 26 qualities of a devotee, you won't develop them in the cave, because you'll have nobody to be humble or tolerant to, so you just be yourself in the cave. If the cave is full of devotees, then you're going to have to learn these 26 qualities really fast. Equanimity, peacefulness, tolerance. You're really getting your mettle tested. But that's good, to get your mettle tested is good, isn't it? Otherwise you may find you haven't got metal, you may find you've actually got a plastic thing instead. So you get your metal tested now. I don't know if it's the same word actually, because the metal is spelled M-E-T-T-L-E. I'm not sure what that metal refers to when you say your metal is being tested. I have to research that one. But, so in the association of devotees, Kripa Mahaprabhu was saying it's like having lots of rough stones, and then all they do with these stones is they just jumble them together, they tumble them around, and then when they come out, they're all really nice and smooth. So in the association of devotees, you get all your rough edges smoothed down. Prabhu! Except my own basis. Prabhu! That was so kind, thank you. So you're being forced to be nice. In fact, Mahaprabhu was saying he can sum all the different strategies of psychological and all these different things that we're supposed to implement by just being nice. Just be nice. That's basically what it is. Just be a nice person. You may need a lot of information to convince you that you need to do that, but the end result is the same. Just be a nice devotee. Just be a simple, nice devotee. Well-intentioned.
It's not easy.
Yes. It's no. The Prabhupada said it would be simple, he didn't say it would be easy. It is very simple. But we're not very simple. But yeah, so these things are really nice. So that's a meditation for today. You can meditate on this one. Be sincere in purpose, and then the Lord is there to help in every way. The real solution to all our problems is seeing Krishna behind everything going on in our lives and understanding what Krishna wants from us. Not what that person who's annoying me wants from us. What does Krishna? Krishna's not that annoying person in front of us to see how we're going to react. Are we going to remember Krishna or are we going to forget Krishna? So we can see it like that. Iskar Guru in the key. Srila Prabhupada ki. Go Premanandi. Hari Bo. Go Rebecca.